What's up, YouTubers? This is me, Johnny. I just Tonight I want to talk about some things that are going on in the U.S. So I just want to see what's going on with the viewers out there, people who watch my videos. More and more, when I go online, I see a lot of discord and a lot of kind of anger and frustration. It seems like in the United States, people are more in their tribal groups more than ever. Even in like the conservative movement, if you ask me, libertarians, anarchists, Republicans, conservatives, they're all at each other's throat half the time. When they're not at each other's throats, then they're at the throats of the opposition party. Seems like it's much different from when I was a kid. I'm not sure if that's because of social media or just the times we live in, or people sense that there's like a change coming. I think some of it's related to the social media platforms. It seems like we're more disconnected as human beings than ever. And just for the record, I'm not saying we got to hold hands and sing Kumbaya or anything, but it just seems like as we go down the tubes, economically speaking, like just for example, today was another bad day in the share markets. Bonds barely held on. They barely rallied. We have 8 or 9% inflation in most of the world, 10, 12 other parts of the world, and then more and more there's like 30, 40% inflation in a lot of countries. But it seems like more than ever, people are not cooperating anymore. People are digging in their heels. I get the sense that people don't have any hope for the future. People aren't thinking there's going to be good times ahead. For my part, I'm not really sure. In general, I try to stay positive, but from everything I see happening in Europe, it seems like Europe, I'm talking about the EU specifically, not the United Kingdom. The EU seems to want to, what's the word? Now it escapes me, but they want to de-industrialize their society. And I'm not joking, it seems like the elite, the powers that be, sincerely want to take Europe off oil and gas, even nuclear. They want to totally get rid of carbon, even if it means destroying their middle classes, destroying the well-being of the middle classes, even if it means people are going to freeze or be very cold in the winter and be very hot in the summer, even if it means older people who need heat in the winter and cooling in the summer because they're more vulnerable, even if it means people like that suffer and die. It seems like the EU policymakers are really digging in their heels to take their society down. And because of social media and because it's hard to know the truth, I don't know the truth of how much support they're getting or how much pushback they're getting. I mean, if you go on not Facebook, Twitter, you can see there's a lot of protesting. I'm not sure to the extent that it's true. Just like when we look at the war in Ukraine, I'm not sure what's true of the Ukrainian side versus the Russian side. Just an example in the Ukraine. I think if I understand right now, there's like a draft in Russia. The war is getting more and more unpopular with their common folk. I saw some videos on Twitter of people Russians heading towards the border towards Finland, if I remember right. And I also saw videos of people going towards Georgia, the country Georgia, to kind of escape the problems of the war. I'm not sure if that's because of the draft, lower standard of living, or what that is, but that's what I see. But I don't know if it's true or not. It's just at the same time, no, everyone's talking about how successful the Ukraine is being, and that may be true, but no one's really talking about the debts they're accumulating to the United States. No one's talking about they have really bad inflation. Their currency is not doing too well. And let's say they win. Their win means they owe a lot to the United States, which means we'll put them over a barrel to get our pound of flesh. By we, I mean the U.S. government. If they lose, Russia won't treat them too kindly either. So I don't know how they can win, just like I don't really know how Russia can win. The only smart thing I saw about the whole thing, or not smart, the thing I agree with is the most productive people of the Ukraine and Russia should just leave. But I realize I'm going to get a lot of pushback for saying that. But anyways, it is what it is. But that's just what's going on in Europe. They're totally deindustrializing while they have a war going on towards the east. And you have people pushing back on it, I think, but like I said, I don't really know to the extent that they are, because it seemed to be a lot of support for decarbonizing their economy, even if it means a lot of suffering. Um, and the people who don't like it are leaving. I'll just make that point real clear. From what I know of the Germans and the Northern Europeans, are heading to South America, some to Central America, and the ones with more money and capital are going to United States and Canada and Mexico. Anyhow, I'm running out of beer. Had such a bad day in the markets, I have to drink a couple beers tonight. Anyways, so in my memory, it hasn't been this bad since this is the first time in my lifetime I remember it being this bad. What I always remember as a kid growing up, I came up at the tail end of inflation in the United States, and I remember reading books and watching movies and seeing the culture like in the United Kingdom and New Zealand, but more New Zealand, where they had high rates of inflation. People were despondent, people were immigrating, things like that. But that was just a memory from watching movies and reading books. So other than right now today, I don't think it's been this bad. And I want to attribute it to kind of a weakening economy for the middle classes of the world, or the first world countries. A higher and higher cost of living through inflation. By inflation, I mean increasing the money supply, where everything from housing to food goes up a lot. In the past, it wasn't like this. Housing just went up and rents just went up, but it was manageable. Now it's to the point where when the last time I was in the States, a steak was like 30 or 40 bucks at a grocery store. Well, 30, let's call it 30 to 40 for the tomahawks. Anyways, when I left, gas was $5 a gallon, but now it's come down quite a bit. Anyhow, there seems to be a malaise in Europe and the United States and Canada. There seems to be people are giving up because there's no political choice they can make at the voting booth to really make things better. Like, there's a consensus that if you vote for the left or the right, it won't really change anything because the establishment is in control, and if you do change something, the establishment will reverse it. We saw that with the Trump situation. That's what I'll call it. Whatever Trump did, the left protested against it heavily to drag their feet and do whatever they could to stop it. I expect if Republicans win big in the midterm elections, the same thing will happen with the left. Plus, I'm not really confident the Republicans are really cut spending and get rid of regulations, things like that. The impression I get from the establishment and a lot of people right now in general is they're trying to get as much money as they can before the whole thing collapses. And just for the record, I'm not like saying I'm any different. I'm trying to protect my interests as best I can before the whole thing collapses. The thing is, with middle class people, you can't exactly, collect economic rent from the government when you're in the middle class like you can if you're a corporation, or if you're in the union, or if you're close to the power of government, or things like that. This whole thing reminds me of when I was reading about before Russia collapsed under communism, where people in the Communist Party stole as much money as they could, put it in Swiss banks as fast as they could. They sold off all the natural resources as fast as they could, put it in Swiss banks and other banks, knowing full well the whole thing was going to collapse. It kind of feels like that, except for in the West, where corporations and companies are doing everything they can to get as much money as they can as fast as they can before this whole thing collapses. It feels like people in general are doing that. I say that because during COVID, we saw a lot of fraud with the PPE loans and a lot of stuff like that. I can't speak for like the United Kingdom or Australia, but millions of small businesses went under in the United States, or hundreds of thousands to millions. I think the same thing in Australia, New Zealand, in the UK. And the governments, under whether it was a left-leaning party or a right-leaning party, they gave all these corporations big handouts and bailouts. And just for example, in the United States, Amazon was allowed to stay open, and a lot of companies, Target, like that, small business were shut down depending on what state you're in, and they were shut down for so long they just lost everything. They pulled up stakes, sold what they could, and if they couldn't meet their needs or meet their obligations, they just went into receivership or bankruptcy. So there's a lot of anger because of that. And then during the Trump administration, a lot of things weren't done that people on the right wanted done. And I think the same thing's going to happen under Biden, or is happening under Biden, where a lot of stuff they want done is not going to get done. So now there's just going to be this true anger. I don't know how it's really going to boil over. I don't really think the midterms are going to matter much, in my opinion. We have some elections coming up in Italy where the far right appears to be winning. My understanding, the far right in Sweden, and I'm not being disparaging, I'm just pointing out how even if the far right in a lot of countries win, if it doesn't change things materially for average people, I think there's going to be a lot more anger, and I think that's what's going to happen. What happens after that, I don't know. Like a right-wing, a left-wing dictatorship, it's hard to imagine in 2020 or 2022 where everyone's fat and happy, or somewhat happy and lazy. Not really happy, but lazy. I'll put it that way. I'll only speak for North America, but it seems to be that's what I'm seeing in the world. It seems like there should be more protests in Europe for what's happening than what I'm seeing and experiencing. It seems like there's a lot of apathy, and I don't blame people for being apathetic, but it seems like there's a lot of apathy right now, and a lot of despair and loss of hope. I would say that's what's really scary to me. Not the share markets falling, not the bond markets crashing, but the lack of hope. Because in North America and the United States, we've always been, what I would say, Americans have always been a hopeful people. The United States and Canada have always had a prosperity outlook, and now it seems like we're losing that. And it's just kind of painful for me to see. And it seems like there's nowhere to go anymore where you can kind of escape that. In my case, I've kind of gone to Latin America, and that's my situation. But it seems like a lot of first world countries now, people just don't enjoy life much anymore, and they're caught up in earning enough to get by, and beating the drum for their own political party. And it seems like each party's trying to destroy the other party, like in a life and death struggle almost. I don't know what to make of the EU. I don't know what to make of the United Kingdom. They have the Conservative Party there. The Conservative Party seems to be disappointing their voters. Today they proposed lowering taxes. I think they have, and handing out, some were calling handouts. I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just saying what I read, which seems to be it wasn't good for the pound. The pound just sunk like a rock. And it's not that it sunk like a rock that's bad, it's how fast it sunk in one day. It's that kind of volatility that's going to really unglue the markets. Happened with the yen, happens with the euro over a slower period of time. Now it's happening with the pound. And now that's going to happen, well, I think it's going to happen in the emerging markets. It's just I don't think anyone gives a hoot about the emerging markets. So when they feel this pain and suffering, I don't think anyone's going to care. But when these things happen in the EU, in the United Kingdom, maybe possibly in New Zealand or Australia, their currency just plunges like a stone, and the cost of living just spirals out of control. I think that's going to have devastating consequences. I don't know what comes after that, because if they vote for the opposition party, and then the opposition comes to power, and then they don't change anything materially to benefit people, I don't know what that's going to do. That's just going to create more malaise and despair, which seems to me won't be good for the economy or for people's outlooks, or for the future of where everyone lives. And it seems like there's not too many places really to run and hide anymore. That's another issue I won't comment on too much tonight, but it seems like in the on the outer reaches of the empire, so to speak, there's still there's still prosperity and there's still opportunities. That's true, but still, you think about people in North America and the EU especially, and even in the UK, I'm just amazed by some of the high prices they're experiencing for their utility costs, their electric bills, their heating bills, all that. It's just a shit show. It's just a shit show. It's literally bankrupting middle class people. People who have money now will now lose it just paying their bills. People with pensions now will lose it. I have a pension that's promised to me, but I can't cash it out till I get 65, and it's just the purchasing power of it's just going into the toilet, and I can't do anything about it. It's just frustrating. I worked those years, I put in the time, and that promise to pay, even if they pay it, it won't purchase much, and they may not even pay it either. Anyways, and there doesn't seem like much you can do, because if you rely on the public sector pensions, like in our case, Social Security in North America, they may raise a retirement age on that. Instead of defaulting out, they may raise retirement age. Seems like no matter what you do for your planning, you plan your lifetime with a pension, with investments, and then the shit hits the fan when the federal banks and their federal banks in Europe, the EU federal bank or whatever they call it there, and whatever they call it in the UK, they just propose these solutions. It's destroying their capital markets. It's destroying their foreign exchange. Their FX is just, man, the dollar is like a wrecking ball right now. It's true. And at some point, the dollars are going to reverse and crash and burn. So yeah, it's good to be bullish on the dollar, and you'll make money being bullish on the dollar. But at some point, the dollar will weaken, and then it's going to crash and burn. And then the reverse for other countries. Their currencies will be too strong. It's just a real shit show. I don't have any answers. Anyways, I just want to get that off my chest. Just feeling like, it seems like no matter what a person does anymore, it's hard to plan for the future. People are at each other's throats in North America and in the EU. And it seems like the only sane places left are Latin America and parts of Asia. Kind of a weird situation. But anyways, that's it for tonight. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for all the comments.